you're watching Bloomberg Quint. It is budget day, and we have with us Uday Kotak, the head of CII, and of course the head of Kotak Mahindra Bank as well. Mr. Kotak, thanks very much for joining us with your thoughts on what to make of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's budget. She's clearly put the accent more on investment, and investment already starting this current fiscal. Because if you look at the gross expenditure, it's pretty much the same for FY21 as it will be for FY22. And it sort of comes with a longish glide path in terms of returning to any kind of fiscal prudence. The focus is on investment, not necessarily consumption. How do you read this?
I think this is a bold budget. The finance minister has taken a call that even if it means we have to borrow more money, we better bet on growth. And growth not through revenue expenditure, but growth through capital expenditure. Therefore, the direction of the spend of the money is right. And the decision to go out there and take the bold call, even if it means higher fiscal deficit, is the significant change in terms of the mindset this budget has demonstrated. And what I find particularly interesting is they've been very targeted in terms of where to spend the money. Infrastructure, healthcare, and financial services in different segments. So these are the three big areas where they've focused on. And in terms of the point which you made, the spend with a higher fisc going into capital expenditure hopefully will create jobs and will lead to significant money in the hands of people. And that is what in turn should create the demand stimulus for the economic growth to get to a better level. Therefore, in many ways, I think COVID is a turning point for a very structural mindset shift to what I believe is a clear reform-oriented budget without ifs and buts.
Mr. Kotak, I understand that in terms of quality of spend, infrastructure spend would of course go higher than any outgo on the revenue side. But this question goes as much to your assessment of where we are in the economy today and how sustainable this recovery path is. Would you have preferred it if she had put some part of the money that she's spending in this 9.5% fiscal deficit number for FY21 towards an immediate or at least medium-term consumption boost? Because infrastructure spends come with a lag effect.
See, first of all, the finance minister also clarified 9.5% also includes the cleanup of off-balance sheet items. So that is all brought onto the books, and we are now seeing a clear picture, a transparent picture. Therefore, the entire 9.5% is not necessarily extra spend, but what was spent is coming formally into the budget books. Having said that, I think the issue which we got to keep in mind that if India has got to take a structural change, I don't think stimulus on demand alone will help us without the supply side being addressed. And if we start spending on infrastructure, not only does it get our longer term structural issues sorted, but also creates the demand because of the spend. The output from the infrastructure projects will take time. Therefore, in the short run, as money flows out, before the output starts benefiting, that is clearly a demand push.
So you don't believe anything further is needed to be done to help sustain the current recovery that we're seeing? Because different people have described it differently. Pent-up demand, of course, the tax collections for the next 3 months, Jan, Feb, March, also depend on the sustainability of this recovery. So I'm trying to get your assessment of how strong this recovery is.
Finally, once you spend money, that is going to find its way through different parts of the economy.
But that's 6 months to a year, so for infrastructure projects, maybe even longer, right?
So, but having said that, if you look at this investment spend, even in the current year, it's higher than the budget estimates. Okay. And she said that she's not going to be constrained by just that additional. If more has to be spent in the current year, they will do it. And by keeping the fiscal deficit higher, that itself is a stimulus to the economy.
Okay, fair enough. Let me get a reaction from you on how both the markets today reacted. There's a fear that there might be a sustained hardening of yields. We've seen what happened with bonds today. But on the other hand, of course, the equity market had probably its best budget day since 1997, my team members tell me. So your views on both yields, as well as how you see the equity markets underpin this economic recovery?
I think from here, as you go for an aggressive borrowing program, and one has to figure out how much of it goes onto RBI's balance sheet and its implications. But the way I look at the situation, that this is going to require very deft management between the government and the RBI. And I genuinely feel that in this period, that has to be handled with certain smoothness, which I think the RBI has demonstrated extremely well in the year 2021 in terms of how it's handled monetary policy to handle the pandemic. Therefore, if we can handle the transition carefully and deftly, we could have a situation where yields don't go out of control. We see a positive capital market, which makes capital raising possible, and you then get a win-win. A marginal increase in yields, I think, is something which the markets will absorb. And as long as we keep the increase in yields marginal and get a disproportionate benefit in terms of structural changes to the economy and the markets are receptive, that will be a plus. Because the government has also made another very important statement. We believe in markets, and that is going to be our mechanism for raising money. 1.75 lakh crores through disinvestment. So they need good markets.
Yeah, well, we look at disinvestment numbers as journalists a little skeptically because government after government has always struggled to meet those numbers. But let me go back to the yield comment you made. We're back above 6% today, Mr. Kotak. How much further or how much more hardening do you see play out, given that we know there's an additional borrowing number of 80,000 crores, in the next 3 months, and then, of course, next year's numbers?
Obviously, there is some pressure, which is evident. But I'm sure that between RBI and the government, and hopefully some global funds into bonds and other areas, could help make sure that the yields don't go out of control. But a 15-20 basis points increase, I don't think is earth-shattering yet. And therefore, as long as we manage this carefully, and we also need to look at how the inflation scene works out, because investments in infrastructure must ensure that they create capacity and quality capacity in real assets rather than revenue expenditure.
Okay, fair enough. A couple of other questions, since we're talking about the financial markets, are two things that will definitely also impact the banking industry. The announcement of a DFI, which we came to know a couple of days ago when we saw the Lok Sabha schedule. And we do know now that they're looking at a development financial institution by the name of NABFID, or that's the acronym. And then the bad bank announcement that came in today, which is not really necessarily a bad bank. It's an ARC. And, I don't think they've as yet apportioned any large amount of money towards it, but 20,000 crores towards the DFI. How do you read the impact of both of these?
So let me first take the bad bank point. I think the ARC is like an aggregator. So it will aggregate all the stress loans from different banks and institutions and bring it together. And probably there will be some security receipt structure which will be given to the different banks. After that, the process, as I understand, is this aggregator will go out and sell these loans to alternate investment funds. And basically, the objective is to create a significant interest in pools of capital, domestic and global, who will buy these assets out and clear it from the ARC and ultimately from the banks themselves by buying them in cash or significant part of it in cash. Therefore, this ARC is an intermediate aggregate structure through which accumulation will happen. And then finally, they will be cleared at a market clearing price. And on the second point, which is the...
Mr. Kotak, sorry to interrupt you. Before you get to the second point, how is this ARC going to be different with all the structures we currently already have? I mean,
I think this ARC will be less
like this to work.
This ARC, my understanding is going to be less on the ultimate resolution, but more in the nature of an aggregator.
Okay, and it will be managed, run privately, or will the government be...
Once it becomes an aggregator, then it will have a process through which it will sell down the loans to various alternate investment funds which can buy it on their books, which can buy these loans on the books. Therefore, this is an intermediate structure. That is my understanding. Okay, and you think this is the need of the hour and will be more effective? Because look, we've been discussing a bad bank in this country now. I think please keep in mind that assuming you wanted to have the entire NPLs of the banking system cleaned up, the normal option is different banks, the AIFs go to the different banks and buy it. Here, they're creating an intermediate process to facilitate the process of ultimate sell down. It is not for ultimately hoarding and resolution of the kind which you saw, say, for example, when they did it in IDBI, SASF. So this is a different intermediate structure, which is what my understanding is.
Okay, and so therefore you think it has a better chance of being effective?
Yes, because finally the objective is to dispose of these loans at market clearing price.
Okay, fine. DFI, sir?
On DFI, we are aware that in the past we have had challenges with DFIs. There were many DFIs which had to be changed course in late 90s, early 2000s, and then of course IDFC, which became from an infrastructure finance company into a consumer bank. So we have seen the transition in the past, but this time I think what the key issue in the DFI structure has to be to structure the liability side, where long-term liability gets available onto the balance sheet of the DFI, and that is the key. And the structuring of that, the sources of money for that long-term liability and how that will happen is important on the liability side. And on the asset side, any DFI can function only if the underlying infrastructure company who's dealing with government and particularly the state governments, those entities pay their monies on time and honor contracts. Therefore, on the asset side, a DFI needs to get a comfort that the final end payer pays the money. And on the liability side, you need long-term fixed rate money to make this sustainable. And
where's that money going to come from, Mr. Kotak?
I think that can come from the fiscal balance sheet, though they have not announced it, or maybe they've announced 20,000 crores of capital. Now, there are models, like you've seen the model of NABARD and SIDBI. Bulk of the money comes from PSL shortfalls, which commercial banks have, which are funded into NABARD and SIDBI loans, and which in turn are made available for rural and agriculture, as well as for MSME. Therefore, some similar structure will need to be worked out, which gives tenor to these exposures.
Okay. Let me go back to then the big picture for this budget, sir. A couple of different things. I know that the push towards infrastructure is a higher, better quality spend push. Will it also be able to pull in private investment over a period of time? What do you think that timeline will look like?
I think finally in infrastructure, my view, private investment has always been open, but has suffered at the hands of sovereigns not honoring the legal contracts. So the problem on the infrastructure side is the nature of that relationship between the private player and the sovereign. And that has been the cause of the challenge. Therefore, you have to address that root cause, that if there's a contract, and as long as the contract is fair and transparent, and it's not funny stuff, it must be honored by the state governments.
Okay, sorry. What I meant to ask you, Mr. Kotak, was that, if we see the government spend at the rate that it has announced today, it has been spending in December, January, and it will probably spend next year, will that create enough, will that create the right environment for private investment to also slowly start picking up? We've seen bits and pieces of news of brownfield expansions and some greenfield.
Finally, private investment picks up when it sees opportunity and capacity utilizations going up. The capacity utilizations have been low. As they pick up and go past 75%, the private investment will start investing money. And it is here it's important that we see a reasonably stable interest rate regime. Therefore, thanks to this higher borrowing, we must not allow the fixed rate G-Secs, which is the benchmark, to get to be at very high levels.
Okay, so that takes me to my final question then. This year, 9.5%. Next year, that's lower. And then we've got a glide path of almost 5 years to get to 4.5%. This is a considerable delay in our fiscal consolidation process. How do you view it and its incumbent impacts on the quality of growth?
I think I'll divide it into 2 or 3 parts. First, it's a transparent fiscal deficit. It's not a deficit which is linked to anything off balance sheet. Everything is on balance sheet. Number 2, this is a post-COVID period which has seen extraordinary situations like never before. So we have to respect that reality. And number 3, finally, we have to grow our way out of this. There is no other way. And I must also commend the government for keeping a stable tax regime and wanting the tax rates to go up through higher collections rather than higher tax rates. So they've worked on multiple variables. And I think as long as we can get the growth back in the real economy, I think the outcome is good. It is better to have this real expenditure and must get to good outputs, because you also don't want inflationary aspects to come in out of this.
And you believe this budget will bring the growth back in FY22?
I think the key to this budget success is, number one, we have got the vision in place. We have changed the mindset and come out with a very, very growth-oriented mindset in this budget, which is a plus. But the success of this budget from here is on execution, execution, execution.
All right. Thanks very much, Mr. Kotak. Appreciate you finding the time to speak with us here on
Thank you. Thank you, Menika, and take care and goodbye.
And stay well as well. Thank you.
Bye.